Released in March 2015, Bloodborne is a video game built by From Software. Bloodborne is a spiritual successor to both the Demon's Souls and Dark Souls series. Bloodborne is a spiritual successor to the King's Field series, where in place of its first-person perspective and slower combat, Bloodborne utilizes a third-person camera with fast and visceral combat. In Bloodborne, you play as a hunter who has traveled to Yharnam to hunt savage beasts. From there, the story gets more mysterious as it takes inspiration from FromSoft's previous series. The story is spread out through item descriptions, conversations with NPCs, and various things you see in the environment. The good. The transition to third person is a very welcome one, as you can now get a better look around the environments to spot hidden items and enemies. The sound design is also good with the sounds of nearby enemies and the excellent voice work of the NPCs you talk to. The big star of the sound design though is the music, which you hear in both the Hunter's Dream and in the boss fights you're in. The most noteworthy track is Father Gascoigne's theme, which has a tune which can rival some of Nobuo Uemasu's best works. The combat is fast and fluid and encourages you to get really aggressive in combat compared to the slow, methodical combat of King's Field. There are no shields in this game. Instead, you're equipped with a firearm which you can attack from long distances. If you're really good and can time your shots carefully, you can stagger enemies mid-attack and perform a critical hit afterwards. Getting hit by enemies takes away some of your health, but leaves a yellow section for a few seconds. If you attack enemies during that period, you can recover that section of health. The bosses and enemies in this game will give you a challenge, though it's only slightly harder than your standard Crash Bandicoot game. If you take them too lightly, you will find your health reduced down to 0, so you're encouraged to plan ahead for combat. This is also where one mechanic comes in, where if you die, you drop all your blood echoes, which is this game's EXP and currency. You have a chance of recovering them by returning to the spot you died at and picking them up, or in some instances, killing the enemy that picked them up. One cool thing about your weapons is how you can transform them, which changes their properties and allows them to be utilized for a different style of combat. There are a lot of good factors in this game, but it can't hide the bad. Since this is a first attempt at a new style of combat, there will be some issues such as the camera. There will be times where the camera will be obscured by the environment and hide where your character is positioned. This can get annoying during combat, but not nearly as annoying as the target lock-on feature. So the game is in third person, locking onto enemies feels essential to combat so your attacks reach, but if you're too close to the enemy, the targeting gets wonky, as your character doesn't reorient themselves to the enemy's direction and the attack whiffs. Even worse is during these instances you have to rotate the camera to bring them back into view and retarget them, and the targeting sometimes doesn't work properly, leading you to have to mash the button until it properly targets them. Another annoying thing is that weapon transformations are very unintuitive, since you have to transform it in the menu every time. Not to mention, every time you open the menu, it opens to the default option, so you have to change sub-menus to reach your weapon. I should also mention the game does not pause when you navigate these menus, so if you're in the heat of combat, you need to do it fast or risk losing health or dying. The maximum number of items you can stack in your inventory is 20, which is alright, but I wish there was a way to store excess items you don't use. Oftentimes I found myself finding a surplus of items, but since I reached the max already, there was no way to store them for later. It doesn't help that late game you fight an incredibly hard boss which makes you use up these items, which could lead you to needing to grind enemies before re-challenging him. Another late game annoyance comes in the form of an enemy which is unkillable and can follow you into different areas, requiring you to change your playstyle. One last thing I want to bring up is that there's no way to teleport between lanterns. You have to teleport to the Hunter's Dream first, then teleport to the area you want. I wish I could just teleport directly to the lantern you want to go to, so you have less load screens to look at. While on the topic, this is a good time to talk about The Ugly, where I will discuss the graphics of the game. FromSoft has taken a bold new direction with Bloodborne, trading in the Western medieval aesthetics for something more gothic horror, and I think they really nailed it in this game. From the enemies you fight down to the environments you explore, Bloodborne is a visually striking game. It really pushes the PlayStation to its absolute limits with the amount of detail gone into the environment. That said, it also works against it as the frame rate can start to chug in instances where there's heavy lighting and flame particle effects around. This also doesn't help in the darker areas where using a torch can be very useful. Because of the amount of detail, you will be seeing frequent loading screens when transitioning into new areas, and some areas feel too small to justify the loading. Bloodborne is a fantastic video game that pushes the PlayStation's hardware to its limits with its graphical detail. The combat, while a bit flawed, is fast and fun to master against tough enemies and bosses you face in this game. There are rumors of a PC version with updated graphics and better frame rate in the works, but those are only rumors, so we'll have to wait and see if anything comes of it. Until then, Bloodborne is an excellent game and worthy of the label of the Castlevania of 3D action games. Now for the rating. If a 1 is the Mimic Chest, while a 10 is the Moonlight Greatsword, then Bloodborne gets... You stupid fucking crows! Out of 10.